Hey everyone, and welcome to the Soul Star Cafe. My name is Ruth Perkinson, and I'm really happy all of you are here with me today to talk to a new, very dear friend of mine, Tony Simonetti, about some of the work that he's been doing these past many months. And I wanted to bring him on to the Soul Star Cafe to unpack some of his things that he's been teaching, the things he's been developing and some of the language around all of that so we can begin to understand these beautiful teachings he's being divinely inspired to bring through. So, Tony Simonetti, thank you so much for being on the Soul Star Cafe today with me. Welcome.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And yeah, just very grateful to be here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we met about 8 or 9 months ago via A Course in Miracles, and you came into my meditation group, and it was really lovely to get to know you. And then as I've been getting to know you, you've been doing this really interesting work. And so I thought what we do is start with a little bit about your journey, if you'd like, and also talk about some of the language around what you've noticed about just people's development from duality to non-duality and what the stages are, things of that nature. So I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you and let you kind of guide us through who you are and what this beautiful teaching is that you're unpacking for all of us.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, well, for sure. I think for me, my awakening process or my spiritual journey, it coincided with what I found out was called complex PTSD, which is different from regular PTSD. It's Pete Walker's concept, and it's basically the death ego death by a thousand cuts. Basically, it's just you're sort of it's chronic over time, like small little traumas that sort of add up to be sort of this fog state that is sort of like a complex PTSD. So it can result in there's different trauma responses, right? The fight, flight, freeze, and then there's fawn, which is a pretty big part of my complex PTSD. A lot of times it can look like getting stuck in one of those four states, and not really being able to have healthy access to all four of the responses. And so I found that I was in a chronic fawn response, which is basically just people pleasing to avoid conflict at the expense of oneself as like a survival strategy. And so that kind of happened from growing up in a family system and various friend groups and relational systems that basically I felt like that was the only safe response. There was just so much chaos that I just found like I'm just gonna please everybody around me, and that's going to be how I adapt in the world. And so as I developed in therapy and started to unpack this a little bit more, I noticed that there was as I learned about Course in Miracles, about Eckhart Tolle, about Alan Watts, and these various spiritual teachers, I started to notice that there was this this ego death started to happen, where I started to lose sense of who I was because I was just sort of basking in this beautiful state that you know about, and I know your listeners know about, of just the beautiful space of non-duality and just forgiveness, and that meditative theta state that we can get into of just the beauty and connectedness of everything. And that is like an oceanic feeling, that presence that we can have, that's like an oceanic state that we can get into. But I found that so is the fawn response. That can also be feeling like oceanic, almost like enmeshment, codependency. That can also
Okay.
feel oceanic.
Yeah.
So I wanted to unpack and figure out what's the difference. How do I have that feeling of oceanic non-dual presence while also having protection. And I came to understand that boundaries are very important. I didn't understand the nature of boundaries and how that fits into the practice of spirituality. I didn't find that language anywhere. It seemed like Eckhart Tolle's work, for example, was not trauma informed. So I wanted to create a space and a course to sort of walk people through how do we merge the two? How do we bridge that gap? So that's sort of the crux of my work.
Yeah. Wow, that's well said. Thank you so much. And let's just go back a little bit. You talk about ego death, and what I'd like you to do is just talk a little bit about the shadow, the ego, and the difference between that mystical state and then what the ego might provide as that fawn state, right? I think that's what you were trying to sort of discern, to distinguish between the two of those states.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So if I understand your question right, yeah, I think so. The ego is what we use to operate in the world. So we have to have an ego to sort of be able to
yeah. Do
go
the normal
to,
things, right? Eat
yeah,
lunch
do
and get to the
right.
store. Yeah, right,
We have to be able to do those things. And
yeah,
so oftentimes in these relational systems, like a, for example, like a family system, but it could be a workplace or a spiritual community or a friend group. If you're in these sort of relationship groups and you have complex trauma, or they're creating or reinforcing your complex trauma or your chronic trauma response, like for my in my case it was fawn and kind of freeze. What that can do is it can sort of snap you back into your ego, even as you're trying to be present with them and
right,
just be out of your thoughts and just kind of get into that state of forgiveness.
right,
If your trauma response is constantly taking over and you're
right,
constantly just stuck in that trauma
yeah,
response, it can be very challenging
right,
to have boundaries while also like maintaining that healthy balance between presence and ego. And
right,
so, and we know that's very important
right,
for spiritual work and
right.
forgiveness
Yeah,
and operating in the world. So that's sort of,
yeah, yeah.
does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah.
think what might be helpful too for everyone is to talk. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between just like what a normal PTSD would be, and then what a complex PTSD would be. If you give us a couple of an example of one, and then maybe even a personal example or just something that you've learned.
Yeah, like PTSD, like for example, like we hear that a lot with war, and if there's someone experienced a very traumatic event, like a violent event or like a death, then that might be something that they remember the rest of their life, and they sort of have this post-traumatic stress from that one instance.
Right.
And then complex PTSD is sort of, I think it's more common than people give it
I
credit
agree.
for. I
I
think we're
agree.
learning as the years go by. It's not in, I think it's not in DSM-5 yet, but I think it will be in DSM-6, is my understanding. But
Yeah,
it's a very new concept, so
yeah,
it's not well known enough to know how many
right,
people really have it. But
right,
it basically is more about like little traumas, like little
right,
like snide remarks,
right,
and or like maybe like you get hit or you get bullied by a sibling or by a parent.
right,
And if these things happen from birth and all the way through your adolescence, that's a lot of times where
right,
you're
right,
having like
right.
little bits of trauma. And so it's important to what basically I realized like I was trying to go straight through into the love and light of awakening, and that Alan Watts says we can access that in a second. We absolutely can step into forgiveness and step into that, but I found that it was dangerous for me to do that, considering that I had this complex trauma and I hadn't grieved it. And obviously the ego is an illusion, blame is an illusion, grievances are an illusion.
Right.
But if we don't, if we're constantly blaming ourselves
Right.
for things that other people did to us
Right.
and this trauma response, then it can be challenging to just let go of the ego and just
Right.
step into presence like a
Right.
cat, as Eckhart Tolle says, and just know what to do and where to
Right.
go and how to set boundaries and do all
Right.
this stuff. It
Right.
just seemed like he could do that so easily once he got rid of his thoughts. And
Right.
I just felt like I couldn't do that and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
So I wanted to unpack why that was.
Yeah. So it sounds like that f flight, fight, or freeze or fawn state, which is the fawn state, was your sort of response,
Hmm.
and using that fawn state to basically survive the trauma and be in that field of just being in that place to be a people pleaser, and so that you would stay safe. It was a safety mechanism. Is that what you see it as being?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of resulted in it resulted in safety and survival, but it also cost me my my boundaries and my sense of identity and my sense of self
Right.
and that healthy ego that we use to get around in the world.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, when you're talking about DSM, just for the viewers, he's talking about psychological books, DSM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've been around for about 30, well, more than that, 50 plus years, right? Where they label the different qualities and behaviors of different mental illnesses. And so sometimes they're helpful to sort of figure out like where a being is operating from. So it sounds like complex PTSD is being added into maybe one of the newer psychotherapy DSMs. It's kind of cool.
hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you have an ego fawn response, or you want to stay in this blissful state without bypassing, right? Without doing that spiritual bypassing.
Hmm.
That's so cool. I really like this information. So you were able to, by virtue of what you went through and all that you've studied, and you've come to this new paradigm that you've developed. And can you just talk a little bit about the paradigm, the sovereign sequence, just a tiny bit, just let us know what you've been working on.
Yeah, so I designed basically a course that I created. It's currently free. It won't be free forever, but it's currently a six stage. It's a six-stage course designed to support sensitive souls that are just reclaiming their energy in this process of awakening and coming to understand their different trauma responses, but while also going through like maybe a spiritual journey or an ego death. And so the six phases are the fog, the breaking, the exit or the energetic exit, and then the eclipse, which is the dark night of the soul, which is not like a black hole. I think it's a temporary eclipse. It's a blocking of your light. And then once that blocking passes, is the return and then the rebirth. And that's
Yeah.
sort of, I sort of guide people through that process in the course.
Yeah, it sounds really, really interesting and so helpful, right? Because I think people are really looking for helpfulness and helpful tips while they're on their spiritual journey and their spiritual path. And to know that you don't have to repress anything or keep anything buried, keep anything down, and to no more faking it, right? We just really want to bring all these things up and address them and help each other heal from these things like complex PTSD and that fawn response. And I really think that you've had this divine inspiration, right? When did that divine inspiration come through for you to make up this course that you've developed and are offering for free now, right now?
Yeah, so earlier this year, I decided to just take a sabbatical from my main career. I just felt like I needed to devote time to this full time for just a short period because I had this idea for the past past 5 or so years, but really in the past year or so, it really started to dawn on me what this could look like and what it needed to be, basically. And it really just felt like a divine download and inspiration that just came really naturally to me because I just saw that there wasn't really anything like this, and I wanted to create something that I wish I had.
Yeah. Yeah, because we want to give people these new thoughts, these new paradigms, these new ideas. Are really going to help them understand that they're not alone. That's number one, and that they've got help. There is information out here, out there with you and others that can really be pinpointed to people who have been in that kind of response that you've been through, and they go, oh my gosh, this guy's talking about exactly what I've been through. I've been in this fawn response for, 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know how to get out of it. I don't even know what it is. It's just me trying to survive my life. And now I know I can switch out of that into a healthy spiritual existence that really serves me and helps me heal and helps me learn and helps me just be a better being, right? Well, before we close out today, what I thought we could do is just if you want to give us a couple of tips that might be helpful for somebody coming to your work. We're talking about these stages and things like that, that might be helpful for them right now, just off the top of your head, if you've got anything that's really a good nugget of wisdom or two.
Yeah, so I think one of the main things is like just trusting your nervous system. I think that's a huge crux of what I teach, and like just trusting and allowing for that somatic release. Because often this stuff looks like chronic pain or stress in various areas of the body. For me, it was in my jaw. There's some other places, my low back. So just really feeling into those areas, and just allowing the grief to flow, because I think it sometimes in in spiritual texts it can sort of bypass
Yeah.
those healthy body sensations that can really tell us where the grief is stuck, and just kind of feeling into that can really reveal a lot about where that came from, where it's like where the grief, where the energy wants to move through. And then, once that is felt fully, a lot of times this stuff, the boundaries that we need to set sort of become clearer on their own. But if they're not, it's there are so many resources, and one of them is my course. But to sort of like figure out what those healthy boundaries can be. But I feel like if somebody's stuck in that fawn state, or the fog, basically, of any trauma response, and they're not really feeling connected to themselves, that's the main thing. It's just listening to your body, and just allowing the different the blame, so to speak, to sort of be there, even temporarily, just to say, okay, this is
Yeah.
all this time I thought maybe this was my fault. What if I allow myself to consider the possibility that even though somebody else is maybe responsible for an action that was less than their highest self, and I can have maybe some release of, like, maybe allow myself to cry for the first time if I haven't, or just get angry, get in the car and scream, or scream into a pillow or punch a pillow, whatever it might be, that to allow the process of grief to move through. And because that's sort of what I realized is I couldn't access the blissful states. I couldn't access the meditative states of like oneness and presence without having that access to the healthy release of the trauma first. And it became so much easier to access those states naturally, once I allowed that process to take place.
That's so well said. I love that because just to sort of clarify or just echo what you said there, it's like we need to bring up all of the grievances, all of the upsets, all of the things that have been sort of stored in our biofield, our biology, and in our field even for any number of years, whether it be this lifetime or even another, and to begin to go, hey, this is something I really need to heal from, learn from, and develop an understanding about. And we can do that when we're in our right mind, right? We can do that, and we can find a protocol that, like yours, that might be super helpful to give somebody a step up in their life. And I really feel like you're doing that, Tony. And I really appreciate you diving deep and bringing this work through. I know I think you said the other day you've researched for about 10 years and you've read lots and lots of books and studied a lot of different things. And this is something that what you were saying earlier is something new. It's something that you haven't seen, and so you really wanted to develop this. How can people find you, Tony, if they want to reach out to you and just connect? Can you give us your website?
Yep, the website is sovereigneclipse.org.
Sovereigneclipse.org. Okay,
Yep, and we'll try to put that in the description of this
sure.
video. But yeah, it's that is, and sovereigneclipse.org/sequence is the current URL of the course. So
Great. Yeah,
that
we'll
is
definitely
where I'm
add
at.
those to the description for sure. Thank you so much for coming on the Soul Star Cafe today and talking about your journey a little bit, talking about how you can be helpful to people who've been through the things that you've been through, and having the courage really to just bring up, hey, I'm a survivor of this complex PTSD. It's an ongoing thing, I guess. And we can use these tools now to help us break free of what has been so bonding, all the bondage of the triggers that have happened for so many years, I guess, with a certain person or situation. And you do talk a lot about relationships, parental relationships, sibling relationships, and work relationships, even love relationships. So it all applies, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
All
thank you
right,
so
Tony.
much for
Well,
having me.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm visually challenged, but while I'm trying to find the stop button, do you want to give the reader, or not the reader, but the listener, any last words before we end?
Well, I think just will remind you that that sovereignty and love do not have to be opposites. They can absolutely meet at the heart of truth, and so that is something that I try to remind myself every day is just to be a cheerleader for yourself and remember that differentiation does not have to mean separation.
Oh, I love it. All right. God bless you, Tony Simonetti. Thank you so much for being on. And we'll
Thank you,
see
Ruth.
all you guys very soon in the next video. Take good care.